السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Um, Welcome everyone who join us here in Malaysia, and good evening to those who are watching us from here, and good day to everyone who are watching us from different time zones. Uh, Today, actually, we are meeting here and we are discussing a major event that is happening in West Asia, which also affects every part of the world. We are convening here at a time when the Middle East geopolitical situation is shifting, changing rapidly, and also violently as we speak right now. We witness there in the region in West Asia that things that have been consolidated over decades are coming into question. The Western hegemony that has affected the region is being questioned right now. And we can see a challenge to that situation that has affected the region since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. So we are talking here about something genuine, about something structural that we are witnessing right now. And to help us make sense of what is happening over there and around us, we are glad today to have Dr. Azzam Al-Tamimi. I'm honored to have him with us today. Dr. Azzam has been our guest at the Hashim Sani Center, and we will him here today. And as we discuss this important topic, we have the right person to reflect on the situation in Palestine and what is happening in the region, how that situation in the region is affecting the Palestinian question, and what can we see next? What are the outcome and the implication of the situation in the region? So welcome, Dr. Azzam. We are so happy to have you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting me.
You are welcome. So, Dr. Azzam, as we start, first we would love to hear from you. What do you make of the situation in the region right now? We have a war that is taking place in the region for more than 2 weeks now. Things are changing, and everything is at stake right now. So, based on your observation, what do you see in this situation that we are witnessing at the moment?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, everybody already knows that this is really an Israeli war against Iran, and that the United States of America, under the Trump administration, has been dragged into this war, despite the fact that Trump came to office with the declaration that he didn't want to start new wars. He wanted to end all wars and all conflicts. This was his vow before. Yet somehow, for a variety of reasons, and analysts have all sorts of stories here, Netanyahu managed to convince Trump to join him. So this is the first ever joint Israeli-American war in the Middle East. Of course, the Americans have always supported Israel, supplied it with funds and with weapons and with intelligence and with political and diplomatic clouds in whatever it did in the region, attacking Gaza or attacking Lebanon or attacking Syria or attacking anywhere else. Yet this is the first time US and Israeli forces join hands in perpetrating this attack on Iran. And the reason for this is that Netanyahu apparently saw an opportunity that is unlikely to ever be available to him, with a president in the White House who is very willing to listen to Israel and to comply with its wishes. Uh, Probably the Epstein affair has something to do with it. There are speculations about this, but apparently, with the weakening of Hezbollah in South Lebanon, with the destruction of Gaza and the weakening of Hamas, Netanyahu felt that several factors have combined together in order to make this a golden, unprecedented opportunity to go after Iran, to weaken it and to destroy it. So this is what it is, actually. It is, there is not much more to it.
Doctor, as we look into what you have mentioned just now, so you can now see that this relationship between Israel and the United States, that there is something unusual that we can see here. The United States, as a superpower, seems to be following what Israel wants from this great power in the world, and just to follow what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked Trump to do in relation to Iran here. But here, let us talk a little more about this relationship. Israel, on the other side, for all the decades, it tried to project itself as a regional power, as a superior regional power. And even the Prime Minister Netanyahu, in the last few days, he started to talk about Israel as a global power. So here, when we look into who is framing the scene here, who is leading the situation, do you see that the United States, with all of its calculation and its relationship and its interest all over the world, is risking its position, or is it something like now the United States want to be more hegemon, affecting the Middle East, bringing Israel into the center, and even trying to influence the way the global economy is moving? Because some people will just argue that this is something that started in Venezuela and now is taking place in Iran, where the oil and the global supply is affected. So how do you see this?
Well, I'm sure that Netanyahu must have used some of these arguments to convince Trump that, like you did in Venezuela, you can do the same in Iran. If you remove the top leadership, and then you can change the regime, or you can control the country, you can install in power whoever you wish. And then there is so much oil there. It's not just the oil that is produced by the Arab states in the Gulf, but also Iran, which is a much bigger producer than probably everybody else, or has the potential to be a much bigger producer than everybody else. So probably this was one of the arguments used, and maybe Trump found it feasible that yes, we can do it. So this must be one factor, but there are other factors as well. I think the other main factor is that both Trump and Netanyahu are informed by Zionism. Trump by Christian Zionism, and Netanyahu by Jewish political Zionism. So there is a common ground, and there is a common agenda, if one may say so. Trump's constituency in the United States of America, the Christian Zionists, are anti-Iran, are anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and therefore would want America to be involved in a war like this. But there are already voices in America that are warning that this could end up being a grave miscalculation on the part of the Trump administration. It's already 2 weeks And despite the fact that the Supreme Guide Khamenei was removed from the scene on day number one in the first attack, and with several of the top leaders, Iran is still intact. Its regime is still intact. It has even been emboldened further, and the entire Gulf is now embroiled in this war. The Gulf countries are now aching. They're feeling the pain. They're feeling the economic crunch. And it is very likely that some of them will be questioning their coalition or their alliance with the United States of America. America is unable to protect them. America is focusing more on protecting Israel than on protecting Kuwait or Qatar or the UAE or Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or Oman. And therefore, the very traditional US-Arab relationship is being tested as well.
Oh, that's a great, Doctor. You are bringing here the regional question, because the United States has its own allies or at its own regional network, and it has always managed to keep this relationship intact. So you have Israel in one side, and you have all of these countries on the other side. We witnessed during the genocide in Gaza that the United States under Biden administration tried to just keep the war just only between Israel and the Palestinians and isolate everyone else from that genocide that has taken place for 2 years, more than 2 years. So now we are seeing that the main factor, and one of the main factors is Israel here. And even in the United States, Trump himself and his ministers, they cannot sell what is taking place in Iran to their audience, even to the Republicans. So now you can see in the region that nothing is clear. Even in the United States, they cannot explain what is really happening in the region. So how do you see the regional impact after this? Because now you don't manage the relationship. You just impose this condition and ask everyone to sacrifice, to just follow how the situation will emerge over time.
Now, if we're talking about the Arabs and the Muslims, this war is not going to leave any winners. I think we are all losing as a result of this war. Take, for instance, to start with, at the popular level, this deep division that is taking place among the masses. People who see this some sort of a divine punishment for Iran for what it did in Syria or Iraq or elsewhere. People who are very happy to see the Iranians being hit by the Americans and the Israelis. Some of the comments in the social media written by Muslims or Arabs, if it were not for their names and identities, you'd think they were Zionists, expressing a Zionist sentiment, really, of jubilation that Iran is coming under attack. And there are all on the other side people who find this camp to be utterly wrong, that this is a war waged by Zionism and the Zionist camp against the Muslim world as a whole, because if Iran is destroyed and if its resources are controlled by the United States of America, the Zionists will not spare anybody after that. They will move from one country to another. And such an opinion draws on some of the statements made by Israeli spokespersons who even threatened Saudi Arabia, who threatened Turkey, who threatened Syria, and some even threatened Pakistan. I mean, you can imagine that this camp of opponents of this war is warning that this is not a war against Iran per se. This is a war against the Arabs and the Muslims. And then, if you talk about the official level, look at the situation. I think some of the regional powers, whether small, medium, or big size, uh, are being dragged into a war with Iran they didn't want. They were not planning. And now this tit for tat that is happening on daily basis is going to bequeath us a very sour relationship among the neighbors. Take, for instance, Oman and Iran. They were on excellent terms. Qatar and Iran, they were on excellent terms. The UAE, even economically, they were on excellent terms commercially and economically, financially with the Iranians. And now all of this war is turning them into enemies, into powers hostile to each other, exchanging blame as to what caused all of this to happen. I think eventually the peoples of the region and the current regimes in the region, I don't see winners emerging out of them. Of course, there are other winners. I mean, one of the main beneficiaries from this war is Russia. The Trump administration has lifted the sanctions imposed on Russian oil to the dismay of the Germans and the dismay of many Europeans who felt this could only empower and embolden the Russians in their war in the Ukraine. But my analysis of this is that the rapprochement or the relationship, the warming of relations between Russia and the United States of America has very much to do with the personal relationship between Putin and Trump. And I think Trump and Putin have been coordinating things in the region for some time. Take, for instance, the case of Syria. The change in Syria could never have happened had it not been for an agreement reached between Putin and Trump. What I mean is the change of the regime, the toppling of Bashar al-Assad. I know from my own sources in the close to the British government that it was the Russians who came to Bashar al-Assad, took him by surprise and told him, the game is over, you have to leave. They put him on a flight, sent him to Moscow, and handed Syria over to the Americans. And this is what paved the way for the groups that came from the north, from Idlib, etc., and marched all the way nearly without a bullet being fired until they took over the country. So this interplay between the major powers, eventually the peoples of the region are going to pay for it, and the Syrians are eventually going to pay for it, because the idea in Trump's mind, this may not happen, but at least the design that Trump has for Syria is that Syria will eventually join the Abrahamic Accords. And I think there must have been some sort of a tacit understanding with the current government in Syria, had it not been for the fact that the extreme right-wingers in Israel started attacking Syria instead of celebrating the change that took place, which from the American point of view was in favor of Israel rather than in favor of anything else.
Doctor, you have brought an important point here, talking about the Abraham Accords. If we remember, just in the last few years, one of the main pretexts for the Abraham Accords was that, you have this threat coming from Iran, and we have to have a unified front to tackle this threat against the Sunni Arab countries in the region. And some of the Arab countries have joined this Abraham Accord, which was the moving. I mean the continuation of the Abraham Accord was halted during and after the genocide in Gaza. But looking now into what has the United States and Israel done to the region, do you see that the Iranian threat, as they framed at the time, is it still valid to sell? It's complicated. We are 2 weeks into this war now, and some people will argue that Iran has launched uh, missiles and rockets across the region. But can we look into the situation from this lens, or just go to those who initiated the war? So, looking into the Iranian threat card, do you see that bringing it is this even sectarian card, talking about Shia and Muslim and Sunnis? Do you see that is going to have more grounds, or people will understand well that, okay, those who started the war, not the Iranians in the first place, but it was initiated by the United States and Israel. So how do you weigh this narrative about who started this and who will be the main threat based on your
Well,
observation?
very clearly, it was the Israelis who started this. I mean, the Iranians, on the eve of the war, the Iranians and Omanis were very optimistic that an agreement was about to be reached. Yet, you see, this talk about the Iranian threat and the use of the sectarian rhetoric, this Shiite-Sunni divide, is not new. This goes all the way back to the early 1980s. If you remember, when the Iranian Revolution succeeded in toppling the Shah, the regime of the Shah, who was America's policeman. He was known as the U.S. policeman in the region. And prior to the revolution of 1979, Iran was the main supplier of Israel of oil. And the Shah's regime was on excellent terms with many Arab regimes, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, the rest of the Gulf countries, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, under Sadat, of course, and even with Saddam Hussein, who had signed with the Shah, with the Shah's regime, the Algiers Treaty. So what happened is that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, supported by the United States of America and Western Europe, incited Saddam Hussein to wage the war against Iran. So actually the Iraqi-Iran war was not started by the Iranians. It was started by Saddam's regime under the pretext that the new regime in Tehran posed a potential threat, was potentially threatening to the region. And this, of course, led subsequently, after a decade, to another crisis when Kuwait came back to Saddam Hussein and said to him, well, your war against Iran has not done away with the Iranian threat, and therefore we want you to pay us the money that we paid you for to fund that war. And that's why he invaded Kuwait at the time in 1990. So you see, people create a myth and then start building on it. I personally know very well that initially the Iranians, after the success of their revolution, were not interested in having any hostility with anybody because they inherited a destroyed country. They wanted to rebuild Iran. And I was told by Ahmed Al-Khatib, with whom I recorded Murajaat, and who was a leading Iraqi Shiite cleric working at Tehran radio, that his Iraqi group working in the Arabic service of Tehran radio wanted to incite the Iraqis to turn against Saddam Hussein so that hopefully a similar revolution will take place in Iraq as happened in Iran. And Khomeini intervened to prevent them because he didn't want to start any hostilities with anybody, because Iran, at least at that time, wanted to improve relations with the neighborhood in order to be able to rebuild itself. So you see, this is how it starts. And the Americans have always been leading this. The creation of terms, of names, of labels, in order to justify a certain hostility, a certain policy they adopt here or there. And I'm not sure that the Abrahamic Accords were in any way incited or motivated by any Iranian threat. I think the Abrahamic Accords happened because the Arabs who joined in were already Zionized. These governments were already Zionized. The government of Bahrain and the government of the UAE, and later on the government of Morocco, then the government of Sudan, all those who joined the Abrahamic Accords had already espoused Zionism as an idea, as an ideology. Because what is Zionism? Zionism is to recognize the right of the Jews to come from anywhere in the world, settle in Palestine, and dispossess its indigenous population. This is what it is. This is what Zionism is. And to justify whatever means are needed in order to achieve this. So the Abrahamic Accord was the crowning of the Zionization of some of the existing Arab governments. And on the eve of the 7th of October, 2023, Saudi Arabia was getting ready to join in. And had Saudi Arabia joined in, Pakistan was next on the list. Indonesia was next on the list. So the Zionists, the Israelis and their supporters were having this sentiment of jubilation that they were actually imposing their hegemony everywhere in the region. Because once you enter into the Abrahamic Accords, you become a member, an active member of the Zionist camp. That's what it is. That's what it means.
So, Dr. Azzam, you mentioned the 7th of October, and this is our next point that we would love to hear your perspective on that. There was the Abraham Accords. The Arab world was more preoccupied with all kinds of internal conflicts, crises everywhere in terms of economy, security, and you didn't see any even emerging hope that things will be better for the region or even for the Palestinians. It was a chaotic situation at that time. Now, the 7th of October took place, and it was apparently a rupture. Israel used to adopt mowing the lawn doctrine in dealing with the Palestinians. When they managed, and they thought they managed the situation in Gaza while having periodic conflicts or clashes, engagements with the Palestinians, then trying to buy some time of containment in their view. But that was something considered by the Israelis themselves as a failure. Now we can see Israel is acting in a different way. That is just if any threat emerges, they will go all along to just eliminate that threat, which is just a zero-sum mentality that is taking place everywhere. They even now talking about the extremist Shias and also the extremist Sunnis. So they are not going after only the Iran. They are now just laying the ground for even attacking other regional countries under the pretext of being like other forces, extremist forces that coming from Sunni countries. So now, do you see Israel after the 7th of October acting from the position of strength, or is just being desperate in dealing with all of this mess and these challenges around it?
I think the leadership in Israel is acting on a number of maybe motivators. Now, first of all, Netanyahu, as a politician, needs to perpetuate this war. It is in his interests for wars and for conflicts not to come to an end, because he has personal problems, he has legal problems, and many people were speculating that he would end up in prison for whatever he is accused of in terms of corruption and other crimes. But also, the elite in charge of Israel today uh, are a different brand of Zionists. These are so-called religious Zionists who believe God is with them, and therefore whatever they do, they're only likely to be successful. And they don't give a damn about anything, about any convention, about any any article of international law, about any international institution. So this is the sort of mentality now. They don't even care about reputation, whether Israel's reputation is being tarnished or not, which it has. It has been destroyed, actually, during the 2 years of genocide in Gaza. So I think it's not out of desperation that the Israelis are acting. It is out of the sense of superpower. They feel that they can do whatever they like. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran describes to us how the people of Ad used to say, وَقَالُوا مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً, and they said, who is stronger than us? And this is exactly what they've been saying. And this is exactly what Trump has been saying. And he's said it repeatedly, that we have the weapons, we have the abilities, we control everybody, we have the money, we can do to anybody whatever we want. And such a sentiment blinds, and so they are blinded. They are drunk with this sense of superiority and strength, and that's why they are acting like this. So in the immediate term, they seem to be gaining. They seem to be succeeding. They destroyed Gaza, they destroyed South Lebanon, they weakened Hamas, they weakened Hezbollah, although Hezbollah is now coming back again, but now they have a Zionist government in Beirut ruling Lebanon, they have Zionist governments across the Arab world. So these are signs of success. Yet on the medium to long term, they are actually committing suicide because they're going against the world, and the world is realizing more than ever before the true essence of Zionism, that Zionism is anti-human. It's not just anti-Arab or anti-Muslim, or anti-Shiite or anti-Sunni. This is actually anti-human, and this is even worse than the Nazis in Germany. It's a lot worse than apartheid in South Africa, and therefore, on the medium to long term, this will eventually lead to their demise. I have no doubt about this at all.
So now, when you are talking about the fate of the Israelis and this occupation that has been in such dire situation as you described in the long term, uh, how do you see that the link between Al-Aqsa flood and what we are witnessing right now?
Well, Al-Aqsa flood was a Hamas decision to address chronic and acute problems. This is how it started. And I don't think that the planners, I'm not sure about this, of course. I'm just assuming, because the planners have gone already. Only we don't know. I mean, we don't have documents in our hands to reveal the full picture of what they were drawing. But at least from what is available to me personally, Gaza had been under siege for 17 years. And the siege was taking its toll on the people of Gaza. And the people of Gaza wanted an end to this siege. Then The prisoners or the detainees, al-Asra, the captives in Israeli detention centers. This was a very pressing issue for every Palestinian family, both in the West Bank, in Gaza, and even in 1948 Palestine. And the families were also hoping something would happen that would secure the release of their loved ones, some of whom had been languishing in terrible conditions for several decades. And then we had the threat posed to Al-Aqsa, that every day the settlers, supported by the Israeli army, were making incursions, were attacking, were intruding. They were threatening, and they were very, very real threats of bringing down the mosque, to rebuild, to establish the third temple in its place. And so these are three factors. And then the fourth factor is that the Palestinian cause was being ignored by everybody, ignored by the Arabs, ignored by the Muslims, ignored by the world, by international institutions. And all the Arabs were interested in, I'm talking here about governments, about regimes, is this competition to join the Abrahamic Accords. So I think all these four factors combined to prompt the leadership of Hamas in Gaza to carry out the attack. Now, whether that attack on the 7th of October was intended to be limited to achieve certain objectives, or was intended to be the beginning of the grand liberation campaign, there are different opinions regarding this question. But this is why it happened, these four factors. Yet, like in every case, whenever there is a conflict, whether it is a localized, regionalized, or globalized conflict, there are ramifications, there are repercussions. And the 7th of October had enormous repercussions. Its reverberations went across the world. They were felt everywhere, in America, in Asia, in Africa, in the East, in the West. And of course, the current war is probably one of those ramifications, because the Zionists, both in America and in Israel, felt they could go after Iran, that they managed to destroy Gaza without being hindered, that the entire region was collaborating with them. When they collaborated with them against Gaza, they could easily collaborate with them against Iran. And it is to be noted here that there were very few voices, probably just the voice of the Qataris, the voice of the Omanis, to some extent the Saudis, of course, to be fair to them, who warned against a war waged on Iran. Yet the rest of the region apparently didn't mind. And that encouraged the Israelis and the Americans to do what they're doing.
Oh, thank you for observation, Doctor. And here, when we are talking about the situation in Palestine, we talked about the 7th of October, but looking on the other side, talking about the peace process. Now, the region is at war. Even the diplomatic negotiation between sovereign states, like between the United States and Iran, it becomes secondary or even irrelevant. Iran feels that it has been, it was under the United States, played out Iran and used the negotiation just to prepare for the war. And the negotiation was apparently a smoke screen for military offensive in this case. So what do you see the next for the Palestinians when it comes to the peace process? You have the Palestinian Authority that, it becomes even less relevant when it comes to the situation in Palestine, even when Trump assembled his board of peace and had the plan for Gaza, he didn't bother to have a Palestinian representative from the Palestinian Authority. So, with all of what we are seeing in the region, this is a new norm in the region. Do you see the potential for the peace process in the short or medium term for the Palestinian issue?
No, on the Palestinian side, there is no peace process. It ended a long time ago. I think it ended with the killing of Yasser Arafat. And it ended even several years before the killing of Yasser Arafat. I think it ended completely. It came to an end, the peace process, with the failure of the Camp David talks in 2000, which that failure led to the eruption of the Second Intifada. And then the Second Intifada led to the destruction of the Palestinian Authority and the killing of Yasser Arafat. The Palestinian Authority that was revived after the killing of Yasser Arafat was no longer interested in any peace process. The Israelis didn't want to continue any negotiations with it. It had already been transferred completely. It had already been transformed completely into a security agency. So the Palestinian Authority is just a name. It means it doesn't really mean any authority. It doesn't represent the Palestinians. It doesn't defend Palestinian interests. It has no objective that is conducive to the best interest of the Palestinians. It exists as a collaborating agency helping the Israeli occupation to maintain the occupation for as long as it takes. This is what it is. And if there are people who don't understand this, then bad luck to them. Because if you think of Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, as a representative of the Palestinians or the Palestinian Authority as working for the best interest of the Palestinians, that's a delusion. That is not the reality at all.
So this is the peace process that was just one way of managing the Palestinian cause for decades. And it seems that now it's in a miss, it's a failure. But Israel tried, and the United States tried to make it as an end game for the Palestinians, and even for other Muslim countries tried to gather them around this idea about just having two states together coexisting, the occupation and the Palestinians will live together. And that was something that as a strategic solution for the Palestinian issue. But looking into other countries, specifically if we are talking about Malaysia, Malaysia didn't have normal relationship with with Israel. They didn't just adopt to that narrative that okay, just have your own relationship with Israel, and things will be better for the Palestinians and for everyone. Now you see that, and you mentioned Dr. Azzam, that after the signing of the Abraham Accords by the initial countries, the four Muslim countries that they signed the agreement at the time, it was something that promoted among other Muslim nations like Indonesia, Pakistan, but now the situation is different. But however, talking about this peace process, which was also started, the United States started to promote and to talk about it again after the ceasefire signed between the Palestinian resistance and the Israelis, like to end the genocide in Gaza. They started to promote this idea again. Okay, you have relationship with Israel, you just have this normal relationship. Now, talking about Malaysia and this region, Southeast Asia, Malaysia seemed to be like it has taken the right position not to be engaged, because we see now it's more about conflict, it's about hegemony, it's about erasure of the Palestinians. How do you see the engagement? What do you suggest for the engagement from this region to act with all of this situation in Palestine and in the region? Because certainly this region and many around the world have been affected by the war and by the situation in Palestine. So, what do you propose, or what is your thought about the engagement between Malaysia, Southeast Asia, and the Palestinian issue?
Well, yes, Malaysia has not recognized Israel. It does not engage in any direct talks with the Israelis. Um, and I think there is a better understanding at the level of decision makers in Malaysia to the nature of Israel and Zionism than in some of the neighboring countries. I mean, I regret that the Indonesian government is lacking in this regard. But you see, it really all depends on what the Arabs are doing. I cannot blame the Indonesians or the Pakistanis or the Malaysians if they are drawn into this track if if part of the Palestinians and many Arabs are already part of it, because it's like what happened after Oslo when Yasser Arafat and his group signed the Oslo Accords. We started seeing many countries around the world, especially in Asia and Africa, to some extent in Latin America, countries who were supportive of the Palestinian cause, who sympathized with the Palestinians. They started saying we cannot be more Palestinian than the Palestinians, and they started opening their doors to the Israelis, and the Israelis invaded Africa, invaded Asia. We saw China, India, two major powers in Asia compete in building relations with Israel and exchanging cooperation, security, military, etc., economic as well. And this is all the sin of the Palestinians, or some of the Palestinians who recognize Israel. But of course, having said that, I would urge our brothers and sisters in Malaysia to always focus on one point. What is Israel? What is Zionism? What is its objective? What's its origin? Don't just think of it as a country that exists somewhere in the world and that we might reap benefits from establishing relations with it. Every country that establishes relations with Israel suffers as a result of Zionist intrigues, Zionist attempts to undermine the sovereignty and the authority in that country. Look at even Britain. Although Britain was the creator of State of Israel in the first place, because there was British mandate, and the British mandate paved the way for the Zionist gangs to come into Palestine from Europe. They left Palestine for them. They supported them. They provided them with diplomatic and political clout throughout the years. And yet, this was not enough. As the Al Jazeera famous documentary, The Lobby, shows very clearly, the Zionists sought to invade the top establishment in the United Kingdom, as they tried to do the same thing among the decision-making circles in Washington, which is the second stage of the lobby of the USA, which is available online, although Al Jazeera never really broadcast it. So you see, Zionism is a very destructive movement because in essence, it means that Jews are superior to everybody else. Of course, most Jews don't believe in this. And I have many Jewish friends who are anti-Zionist. But the Zionists believe that being a Jew means you are above everybody else, and means that you have a divine license to commit against others whatever that is usually considered to be illegal or unlawful. So it is a very dangerous movement, and it is on the basis of this, and from the point of wanting to protect oneself, that they should never ever coexist with Zionism or recognize the legitimacy of the State of Israel.
Thanks, Doctor. Actually, now we land into our probably the last question, and I appreciate your time. You are fasting today, and we're fasting. So, but we just have this last question about something I think almost no one has the answer at the moment. But let us just try and give our bit about what actually stops this war. How can we reach a point that this war will just conclude and we have the region returns to normalcy? I don't know if it can happen, that the situation will become as it was before, but at least for this intensive warfare that we are witnessing in the region, what do you think that will bring the end to this situation? We can see that diplomacy is not at play, and all of the international law provisions and institutions, we can see it has, all of these things have failed to stop the genocide in Gaza. And now we can see another instance, another example of something major that no one knows how to deal with. So, in your view, Doctor, with all of your experience and your intellectual contribution, how do you see this is emerging? Or we just see something that will develop over time?
Well, Allahu Alam. I mean, the future is only known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we can tell, at least after 2 weeks of this war, that none of its declared objectives has been achieved. They wanted a regime change, that hasn't happened. They wanted to destroy Iranian arsenal, that hasn't happened. They wanted to curtail Iran's ability to attack Israel or any of the neighbors in the Gulf, that has not happened. They wanted to install a regime to their liking, that hasn't happened. They wanted to invade. Well, at one stage, they thought of invading from the north or from Iraq, and that has failed as well. They thought by removing the top leadership, they could pave the way for demonstrators to take to the streets and change the regime by themselves, and that hasn't happened. Now, there are now conflicting messages from the White House. At times they say, okay, we could do this if they do that. At times they say, oh no, we're going to continue for 3 to 4 more weeks. And now there is talk about a Russian initiative that was rejected by the White House. The Iranians themselves say they are the ones who will decide when this war comes to an end. So as in every conflict, if you cannot achieve the objectives of the war you start, eventually the war will have to come to an end. So long as the Iranians are steadfast, so long as they are resisting, so long as they have the ability to cause chaos around the region, I think it is the Americans and the Israelis who are eventually losing.
Oh, this is a very a good remark, talking about what can be next, Doctor. And we can see that things are just changing by the time. But one main point that you have mentioned in this conversation, that Israel is just trapping itself into this endless wars, and the situation seems to be bleak for the Israelis. Israel used to be thriving with economy, with relationship around the region and beyond. But now Israel is labeled and is well known for its crimes, for its genocidal tendencies. And we can see that the cost is being paid mainly by the Israelis. That you can see Israel has been at war for almost 3 years now. And there's nothing in the horizon tells us that things will be ending very soon. So this is the situation right now. The colonial situation is not sustainable, as we can see. But what is more telling now, that everyone starts to open his eyes about the real situation, the real crisis in the Middle East, in West Asia, where the Israeli occupation becomes even costly for the United States. That is something I'm not sure if President Trump is well aware of that, but that is something that is no, something is getting more tracks in the United States itself. So everyone treats Israel as a cost, as a threat, as something that needs to be managed or even contained, if not more. So thank you, Dr. Azam, for your time, for your thoughts with us. We really appreciate you being with us today, and we thank everyone who joined us in this webinar. Until we meet again, thank you and happy iftar. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.